Hello and welcome to Unscripted. I'm Kendall Washington, and along with me we have Dusty Baker, Dean Straka, aka Straka Flocka, and Alex Gaffigan. How we doing, boys? How we doing?
It's good to be here finally. A long time coming, but finally we are in the studio.
It's about time, right?
One thing that I realized is that we started this maybe 3 months ago, and now we're in the studio, boys. This is exciting. I'm stoked. I'm really excited just to talk some sports with y'all. It's gonna be a good time.
We have a table. We got television monitors. I mean, we're moving up in the world. But
Finally.
it's been an exciting 2
Big day
weeks
in
of
our
sports.
history.
It's been an exciting 2 weeks of sports, and ready to get going and talk about it.
All right, guys. Now we're gonna pass it alongside to our fifth member, Paloma Villicana.
Thanks, Kendall. Well, the team that has turned heads all year long is TCU men's basketball. They started their season off very strong, but lately have been on a losing slump. They've lost the past 4 games to Big 12 Conference, to Baylor, Iowa State, OSU, and recently Kansas on Wednesday night. And Coach Dixon says that they're in a losing bubble and they're trying to fix their errors and get past this, but they're just stuck in a grunt. Wednesday night, they had only 9 turnovers, which was a season low for them. They were close at half, but let the ball away in the second half, giving Kansas the win. So what I'm thinking, guys, to turn this around, they host number 12 West Virginia tomorrow here at TCU. What do you guys think? Are they going to break their losing streak, or are they going to put up a show?
Well, after looking at the past 4 games, all losses, one thing that I really noticed is they struggle going into the second half. Against KU, they were down only 1 point. They had a chance in that ball game. But at the end of the day, you look at TCU, and this is a young team. They're going to make mistakes. They've been doing well this season, but they don't know how to get out of a losing streak, really, and that's where they're at. That's what you call this losing bubble, is the losing streak. And so I think that it's going to be a huge telling tale for them to see if they can even compete tomorrow. It's going to be really tough. West Virginia's a great team. TCU right now is slotted to be a 11 seed, go to the first 4, and face Syracuse in the bracketology, but we'll see what happens. It's definitely going to be kind of a frustrating game, I think, tomorrow.
I don't know about Syracuse. That will be tough, very tough, to say the least.
All the old Big East schools are really just intimidating for these guys.
I know,
Well, in West Virginia, they sit in our way first, and they're a big team. They're strong. They're fast. TCU's really struggled against teams that are really athletic and have a lot of size. You see them, get tossed around by Baylor down low, and I think you're going to see something similar against West Virginia. The key, like you said, Dusty, is going to make sure that we don't get on a streak where we get cold for 8 to 10 minutes and we can't score, because when you play a team like West Virginia who just score and score and score, it's tough to keep up when you're not getting points on the board.
Well, to your point, too, Oklahoma State, they were up late just by 2 points. 6-0 run to end the game for the Cowboys. They lost.
Right.
Again, Iowa State. Close game at halftime, 16-1 run for Iowa State going into halftime, and then 1 point at Kansas, but they could not hold on. And it's demoralizing. For these guys that are young, it's tough to rebound from that.
Well, we'll see what happens tomorrow, but moving on to a winning team, the number 1 college baseball team in America is here on our campus. How good does it feel, guys?
Feels great.
It's awesome.
Feels great,
It's
to be
incredible.
honest.
Watching TCU baseball this past weekend face Penn State and just, annihilate them. It was amazing to see the fact that
Swept them
pitching,
out of
hitting, everything was functioning properly for TCU. That first game, it was kind of tight towards the end. They gave up a couple runs, had to come in for the save. But at the end of the day, TCU has outscored their opponents in their very first 4 games 34-9. 34 runs to 9 runs. The pitching's been great. The hitting's been great. Nolan Brown has been incredible. He's hit .583, and he's leading the team with RBIs. It's been great to watch what he's done. And in addition to that, they have just guys that can hit home runs, can get the base hits when they need them the most. So it's been exciting to really see what TCU baseball can do.
God, when you're the number 1 team in the country, the pressure's there. So people were thinking, how are they going to accumulate that?
The level's high.
Because it's a lot of pressure in how you're going to perform. And you saw it against Penn State. Unbelievable, and pretty much killed it.
The one thing, the last 3 games, they have gone out early. They've come back, but you can't play from behind forever. But in each of the last 3 games, unanswered runs of 7 straight or more. 12 on Saturday, 9 on Sunday, and then Tuesday at UTA, 7 straight runs, 5 of them late. So they're resilient.
It's going to be a struggle to get into it, of course, but the pitching this past weekend was lights out. All the way from Janczak through to Lodolo, the freshman, we were curious to see how he was going to handle the pressure. The 41st overall pick in the draft. A lot of expectations come with that. and he played lights out.
He struck out 7 guys in 5 innings, which is really impressive for a rookie. I think that one interesting thing to look at in the future is Mitchell Traver. He was supposed to be our ace last year, and he came in, he faced Arlington. He kind of struggled a little bit through, I think, 60 pitches it was in 3 innings. So we kind of got to see him progress. He is coming back from an injury, so it's going to be interesting to see if he can kind of move on. But that is a deep rotation. That is something that TCU has over anybody else.
Traver at 4 is insane for most people's depth nowadays in the game.
Well, there's also a special story about TCU baseball going on. What can we learn from that?
Yeah, so before the opener on Friday, there was a fan down in Houston who said on Twitter that for every home run TCU hit by the end of the year, he would donate $10 per home run to the scholarship for the recently passed away Micah Ahern, who was TCU's cheerleader last year, if you will. But when it got on Twitter, Frogs of War, which is SB Nation's TCU site, retweeted it. And by the end of Friday night, there were 75 retweets and pledges. And in total, the average per home run was more than $200 per home run this season.
Everyone's wallets are kind of hurting now.
Yeah.
I think 4 home runs so far, so a lot to go still.
Gosh, that story gives me chills.
For great reason. It's amazing because, of course, last year the slogan for TCU baseball was never ever give up, Nigu. And so with the passing of with Ahern in general, it was, of course, that was the representation of the team. And I think this is a great way to give back, to show how much he really meant to this team and how much he still does mean to this team. So it's definitely been incredible to see what TCU baseball has done on and off the field. With that, we're going to move on to our next segment. After the break, it's going to be about soccer. Alex will take us there. So thank you for watching. We'll be back with Unscripted.
The UEFA Champions League is one of the greatest sporting spectacles on earth. Second only in the soccer world to the World Cup, the UEFA Champions League pits some of the best teams and players in the world against one another. Di Maria, Ronaldo, Messi, Suarez, Neymar, they're all there competing to be some of the best players and best teams in the world. This past week, the round of 16 began with some of the most cracking games the Champions League has ever seen. Jumping right into it, we start with PSG Barcelona, and this one was kind of a blowout from the beginning. Birthday boy Di Maria gave Barcelona all kinds of trouble on their back line, scoring 2 goals on the night and putting Messi and company in real trouble not to make the next round. You can't really ever bet against Barcelona, but it was pretty much men against boys in this one. Picture the Monstars versus the Looney Tunes, or some of the greatest matchups in history. And just when you thought it couldn't get any worse for anybody besides Barcelona, Arsenal went ahead and flipped the script. 5-1 against the German giants Bayern Munich. It was tough to see out there. And Arsenal, thanks for playing, you're out. Still alive but barely breathing, Leicester City, Borussia Dortmund, Napoli, and Monaco. Monaco featured against Manchester City in one of the greatest ties in Champions League history. A 5-3 shocker in Manchester. City snuck away with a 2-goal differential heading into the next leg. But Monaco still alive with 3 goals. It's going to be a great one to see how that turns out. Getting back to sports stateside, though, the NBA trade deadline has come and gone. We saw some blockbuster moves. Boogie Cousins, he's a New Orleans Pelican. What are we feeling about that?
Well, first of all, I think that in general, this trade completely favors the Pelicans. I am stunned. I'm amazed at how poor the Sacramento franchise really is. I'm amazed. This trade should never have happened. Buddy Hield is somebody that I look at as kind of irrelevant as a player. He's young. The first pick and the second pick in the first round and second round pick in the draft is going to be helpful. But in general, Sacramento, stunning move. I'm amazed. They just gave the Pelicans the 8th seed at least. I do think that the Pelicans are going to take this and run with it next year. Maybe not so much this year.
Wow. But
I do think that next year they're going to at least compete for the title. So I'm interested to see how it runs for New Orleans. I think that it's going to help. But I look at it and I'm amazed. I really am. I couldn't believe that happened.
The Kings, too, they were on the verge of cracking the playoff picture, too, and their all-star all of a sudden is gone for nothing, pretty much. I mean, if you're a Kings fan right now, I'd be pretty upset with management. In New Orleans, now they pretty much cashed in on getting an all-star for giving away 3 guys and a few picks, but not going to be that big in the long term.
DeMarcus Cousins labeled it, in quote, as a coward move. It was bad. The GM literally told him days before that he's not going anywhere, that he's going to be a Sacramento King, and they're going to figure this out. And when he got told by a PR guy in an interview, he whispered in his ear and said,
"Yep,
hey, buddy, you just got traded." He's like, oh, okay, whatever. He literally brushed it off. But this is terrible for the Kings. long term, maybe they'll get some benefits from that. But for the Pelicans right now, they're looking good. They're right now 2.5 games out of the 8th seed in the West. And if they want to face the Warriors in the first round, if we're assuming that the Warriors are going to get the #1 seed, which we all know is going to happen. But I like it because now they're just down from Denver, and Denver's at the 9th seed, and we have Portland and Sacramento. There are three teams that are ahead of them. But if they have, like now the Kings, they're going down. They're not going to win any more games. But if we put it in the perspective, the Pelicans could get this 8th seed and secure it.
So if they do get the 8th seed and they match up against the Warriors, I think that's a pretty unfavorable matchup for the Warriors, especially in terms of size.
Because you got the Twin Towers, and that's the one thing that the Warriors are lacking, a big man. We all know they have the shooters with Klay Thompson, Curry, Kevin Durant. They could reign.
Well, right, with Kevin Durant coming to the Warriors, they didn't really address their biggest need. And I think that now with this move, the Warriors, they're looked at as this team that's just going to win the title, and it should be obvious. And they should win. They have the most talent on the court. It's obvious. But at the end of the day, I do think this move is more interesting in terms of at least making this first-round matchup somewhat of a big deal. The Warriors can't take them lightly. The other thing that I look at, though, kind of transitioning from this trade, is there was another trade that people aren't really hyping on, which is the Houston Rockets just acquired Lou Williams.
Love that trade. Absolutely love it. He's going to be maybe 6th Man of the Year nominee. He was averaging 18 points for the Lakers, and now he's going to Houston, which is 2nd in the league in scoring. Unbelievable. I like it a lot. When you add guys like James Harden stirring up with the pot.
MVP candidate right there.
I think he's got to be the MVP, hands down.
You can't give James Harden another weapon like Lou will. They're going to punish teams. And we already saw it. In the first game, the Pelicans with Davis and Cousins, they really struggled against the Rockets.
I'm saying it right now, and a lot of people are looking at this, and they're basically handing the Warriors the championship. I think the Houston Rockets are the team that people need to watch out for because they're the team that people have been sleeping on all year. They have the MVP candidate in Harden, and I just think that this trade really solidifies the shooting for this team. 19 points per game pretty much, as you had mentioned. I think the Rockets are a team that they're a force to be reckoned with.
I like them in the Western Conference. The Western Conference Finals.
Right.
We got the Golden State Warriors against the Rockets. That will be a great matchup because you have all these prolific three-point shooters in Patrick Beverley, James Harden, Eric Gordon, who just won the three-point contest, as we all know. All-Star Weekend, let's just dump that in the trash. But I like it. I hope they're going to give the Warriors a run for their money. I don't think they'll necessarily take it from them, but I like maybe a Game 7. I would love that to get them a little sweaty before they face the Cavs.
They'll want revenge after 2 years ago. Obviously, they played each other, and they had their chances too, but that James Harden shot didn't get off in Game 2, kind of killed that run. Yeah. So they'll want to get back at it.
Really quick with the Eastern Conference, though, are we surprised the Knicks stayed put, didn't get rid of Carmelo Anthony?
My
It seemed like
gosh.
the time.
Or Derrick Rose. Yeah, that's the other one, too.
Rose as well.
I think both of them could have been traded. There was talks about Derrick Rose actually being traded to the Minnesota Timberwolves for Ricky Rubio. Those talks stalled. Nothing really happened. I look at that as kind of surprising to me. I know that y'all have a few other people that you were surprised that didn't get traded to, especially with the Celtics not making any moves either.
Okay, so for the Celtics, I really like Jimmy Butler to go there because Isaiah Thomas, he needs a sidekick, and Al Horford, he's not the sidekick. He's a great big man, but Isaiah needs that next guy up, and I thought Melo would fit in perfectly with that, even though he's been known for not to be the best. He's not that coachable, but Melo, we all know he can shoot the rock.
Absolutely.
So if him and Isaiah Thomas combined, they could have gave the Cavs a run for their money, but they didn't make the move, and Melo is stuck in New York. Come on, man, you got to get out of there.
Rose and Melo are stuck. I don't know. I'm not a fan of what the Knicks have been doing. Phil Jackson has really been just kind of sitting there, not really doing any moves, making any moves. It's been stunning to me. So, I don't know. But transitioning from that, we have a different topic, and of course the NFL season ended last February. The Patriots had won, but now we're, of course, looking to the NFL draft. So, we have our very own sleepers and studs that we think will be drafted in the first couple of rounds. Of course, the NFL draft has in 7 rounds. So we look for our studs first, and I think for myself, I have one that's an obvious one, which is Deshaun Watson, the quarterback of Clemson. He is an absolute stud. I've been looking at draft polls, and it looks like the Jets might be the team that pick him up. And, one move I think that's important is Tony Romo. It depends on where Tony Romo really chooses to go. I think that he's going to go to Denver. But regardless, I think that Deshaun Watson gets picked in the first round. Of course, he's the 3rd-ranked quarterback in that whole poll, but behind Kaiser and Trubisky as well. But I think that Watson has got the intangibles. I think he's somebody that, you saw what he did in the championship against Alabama. It was incredible. He's fast. He's got a great arm. And so it's going to be interesting to see a team like the Jets potentially picking him up. As well as I see another defensive player, the defensive tackle from Alabama, Jonathan Allen. That guy is a monster.
Straight.
As is that entire D-line.
Unbelievable.
They're comparing him to guys like Ndamukong Suh.
Easily. Well, and for good reason. Did you see what he did to Browning in the Peach Bowl against Washington? I mean, it was incredible.
yeah.
Flying squirrel move over the line.
Treat him like a little boy right there.
Brought so much pressure, and he really makes the quarterback's life havoc. It's unbelievable what Allen can do. He's a top 2 pick easily. Could be third if the Bears decided to pick him up, which I think they should. I think that's a great pick. So those are my 2 studs. Dean, what about you?
I got Watson too, just for all that he did at Clemson. I mean, without him, there would have been no run at the title, in my opinion. Also, I think Myles Garrett out of Texas A&M too. All those tackles he had.
Him.
I know, obviously, he played in the SEC West. It's tough to win, and maybe he didn't get all the credit he deserved, but he had a really good run. And if somebody who needs defensive, help can pick him up, could be a big move on their part for how big he is.
Right, and Kendall, who do you have?
Well, harping on that, I love Myles Garrett. Well, besides the fact that he went out and said that he wants to get drafted to the Cowboys, who technically don't have the number 1 pick.
Yeah.
His hometown.
But
It's a problem.
I know, hometown. It made sense. But I really like him. He's a physical freak. He kind of reminds me of a Julius Peppers, just like a man amongst boys on the sideline. So I want to see him probably go to Cleveland. But I also like Leonard Fournette. I feel like we're kind of forgetting on this guy.
I guess he was hurt at the very end.
Yeah, he got that ankle injury, it lingered throughout the season.
And he sat out of his bowl game for LSU.
Not that he wanted
So,
to.
yeah, I mean, that was the difference between McCaffrey and Fournette was the injury. So, I don't know. Fournette's a great pick.
I see him as kind of like an upgraded Jeremy Hill type. He's just big, physical, and just flat, like north and south runner.
Who do you think he's going to go to?
So if I see teams like maybe, I like how you were saying Deshaun Watson to the Jets. I think he could maybe be a good fit for them because you think their running style. They brought in Chris Ivory. He's old,
really
banged
get done.
up, and his career is pretty much down.
They
the
really
toilet.
haven't had a running game since Curtis Martin.
Since him. But so I like Leonard Fournette fitting in there, and because whatever quarterback situation they actually figured out, they still got Brandon Marshall, Decker. They got the receivers. Put in a guy like Leonard Fournette, and they could really flourish in this division.
Well, and speaking of running backs, I mean, besides Leonard Fournette, you have a guy like Dalvin Cook coming out of Florida State. He's kind of been forgotten over the course of the last few months with Florida State's kind of disappointing season. But he's a big, strong, fast runner. A lot of comparisons have been made to Ezekiel Elliott, who went in the top 10 of last year's draft. People see Dalvin Cook being a guy to sneak in the top 10 and really give a team a dynamic offensive weapon that they might not have. And you touched on it, Dusty, when you mentioned Mitch Trubisky, but the fact that Deshaun Watson isn't even the best quarterback to come out of the ACC is remarkable, given what he did in the national championship game. But everybody has seen Trubisky. UNC, obviously not a football powerhouse, but he's been the guy that draft experts and football experts have said has all the physical tools, much like Andrew Luck. And, he's a guy that a lot of teams are looking at to be the franchise leader going forward.
Who do you think he is going to end up with?
Oh, that's tough. Obviously, I think Cleveland chooses Garrett just because he's the best player on the board.
Right.
But that quarterback carousel up there, they really need a guy to come in and just be the franchise quarterback.
They recycle quarterbacks left and right.
What about San Fran? San Fran, they need a quarterback.
They need someone
Kaepernick's
to
out.
too, yeah.
Kaepernick is out.
Gabbert's not going to get the job, I don't think,
Oh,
full time.
jeez.
Not good
Oh,
enough.
He's done. He's done.
Christian Ponder,
Kaepernick's
too.
career is over.
So if he falls to 2, I think Trubisky goes to the Niners for
I think
sure.
that'd be a good fit.
Yeah.
Well, with that, there are studs, but we also have our sleepers. Gaff, who are 2 of your sleepers?
Well, I think it's hard to really choose a sleeper because there's so many guys in the draft that you might not have heard of before, and a guy like Dak Prescott, who had a mediocre combine, but then ended up exploding onto the scene after being a 4th-round pick. I think it'll be interesting to see for me how TCU's Josh Caraway performs in the combine. He's one of 2 invites from TCU. He's always been touted as a great defensive end, but really never flourished at TCU. So it'll be exciting to see if anybody gives him a chance going into the draft.
Kendall.
Well, I know this guy isn't necessarily known as a sleeper, but Christian McCaffrey, stud running back out of Stanford. I really like him because you think about this. He's not going to go top 15. We know that. It's not going to happen
I don't think
because
he goes
teams.
first 2 rounds.
Really, I really like him at the end of the
I could
first
see him
round
at
to
the
the New
end of the
England
second
Patriots.
round. End of the second. Oh, to the New England
I
Patriots.
really want him to go to the New England Patriots as much as that would completely they're just
I
gonna
know
go
exactly
straight
what
to
you're
the
sentiments
roof.
on the
You're
Patriots.
thinking Danny Woodhead right now. That's totally what you're thinking with this guy.
Yes, they brought a guy in like Danny Woodhead a couple years ago, and they made him into a featured back. I mean, he was catching balls out of the backfield, and we know that the versatile guy like Christian McCaffrey, he could do it all. Punt returns, kick returns, rushing the ball, receiving. And now how the league has kind of transitioned from running game to more like the West Coast offensive, I really like how McCaffrey would fit in with the Patriots because Tom Brady would feed him, as you saw in the Super Bowl with James White.
My
looks like a Patriot.
my one concern with McCaffrey is injuries. I think that guy, especially sitting out of the bowl game, that really frustrated me. I'm not a big fan of players sitting out of their bowl games, especially because North Carolina was a quality opponent for Stanford. But I look at
McCaffrey. Think about your career after that. Come on,
but
you put your team
on the line.
You got to pay the man.
Luckily for Stanford, they won. I don't know.
You have to understand that, though. I mean, this guy's thinking about his career.
I look at it as he just put his team on the line. Luckily, Stanford won for them. But my goodness, if Stanford lost, all eyes would have been pointed towards McCaffrey. So I do look at that, and I think that that's a question mark in my eyes.
Oh, it's a question mark.
I think that hurts his draft stock. I do.
But you think that him sitting out of that game?
I think
that's gonna be smart.
I think it hurts his draft stock.
What
is
you say?
You didn't mention Leonard Fournette. He sat out as well, and people are still calling him a
Fournette was
pick.
injured too. That was the other side of it.
The thing is, the playoff has made all the other bowl games irrelevant, and nobody really is motivated to play in them. That's where the root is.
I would understand if McCaffrey was going for a national championship, something like that.
Yeah,
but it's just another bowl game, which we know a bunch of bowl games. Anyone could be in a bowl game. So he was thinking about his career, and if he got hurt in that game, he would have never let that down.
Well, they're all sleepers for a reason, so we'll see what happens with that. But Dean, who is your sleeper?
The guy I like out of Washington, John Ross, top receiver. Last week in the training for the Combine, in the 40-yard dash, 4.3 seconds. That's insane.
Is he going to go for CJ 2K's record?
Oh,
Chris Johnson
we'll
back
see.
in the day?
He could.
Still hasn't been broken yet.
I was blown away by that. The one thing that I am worried about, he is having shoulder surgery after the Combine.
Oh, no.
Could hurt his draft stock, but in the long term, I think he could make some big noise in the NFL. Down the road.
I kind of like him like a Tavon Austin.
Yeah,
I like that
absolutely, yeah.
comparison. They're both very versatile. Know how to, right when they get around the edge, they can just be gone.
I think the one play that really defines Ross was that catch against Colorado where he one-handed
absolutely.
that thing and
I
just
was in awe. I was like,
Oh my
what
goodness.
did I just see?
Put the team on his back.
It was amazing, and he really did help UW move on to the semifinals. And it was kind of sad that Alabama shut him down for
They
the most
stifled him
part.
completely.
It was frustrating.
The first play out of the game, 10 yards.
And you knew from there that Bama's defense would close in on them. But
tough.
for myself with sleepers, I have to look towards the Big 12, and I think that Patrick Mahomes is a guy that a lot of people are sleeping
Yes,
on.
100%.
Quarterback that's very athletic. He kind of reminds me of Trayvon Boykin in a little bit, and as well as any really dual threat quarterback. He's one guy that I think has been slept on for a while because his team hasn't really, performed according to what they were expected to. Texas Tech for a while, people thought that they would be, decent, especially with Mahomes at the helm. But their defense just never really held up. And so I think that finally Mahomes has a chance to get drafted, have a similar Trayvon Boykin style where he gets picked behind and follows up behind somebody that, is a talented quarterback.
Russell Wilson.
Yeah, Russell
The veteran.
Wilson. So I don't know. I could see, maybe a 5th round, 6th round pick for him.
What do you think? What do you think is the best fit for him?
I want a style that is very quick, and I think Carolina would be interesting just because
Behind Cam Newton.
That's the thing of Cam Newton.
I think that would be great.
He had a bad year this year, so
Yeah.
they're looking to maybe get some
Teacher
change.
and
I think
protege.
it'd be a great teacher to have, though. I think that's a great
Cam
offense.
Newton as a teacher.
Yeah, but you know what, though? Cam Newton's the kind of guy that I could see as a mentor to him. And so that's where I look at it and I say that's an offense that fits him. That's a scheme that fits him. He can't fit into every single scheme. He's not a pro-style offense kind of guy. But I think that Mahomes has the capabilities of taking over a team, especially if Newton gets hurt.
You're not going to put
Which
Super
he's-
Cam on the bench.
Which he has been known.
The egos would be clashing
can't
big
put
time.
him on the bench.
He's not trying to overshadow somebody, though. That's the other thing, is this guy's not going to be starting as soon as he gets drafted. Let's put it that way.
I think he's too small.
That's what a lot of people are saying, but he's athletic. And that's where I think that he's the sleeper. That's my style. But with that, we're going to transition to something that we're starting here at Unscripted. It's kind of fun. It's different. But there's news around the country that many people aren't aware of in sports. And so Dean and I are going to give 2 stories, and Gaff and Kendall are going to pester us with questions about them. These are stories that most of you guys that are watching probably do not know. So first of all, Dean, what's one major story in sports that people do not know?
So last week, the MLB, and I'm not a fan of this, they got rid of the 4-pitch intentional walk. Now you just signal guys on base. And to me, I don't know, it's weird being a traditionalist of baseball.
Doesn't it kind of save time though? Instead of just, we know if it's a stud guy coming up and there's bases loaded, and they don't want to do the 4-pitch count, so they're just like automatic go.
Well, that's the idea, but for me, being a Giants fan growing up, Barry Bonds had all the intentional walks. It was so fun seeing the fans boo the pitcher during the 4 pitches, even until you see plays where maybe the guy will throw out a pitch on the walk, and then all of a sudden the run scores, different ball game. And even one time you see a guy actually swinging it and make contact on a ball that was not as far away from the plate as they thought it would be.
That's why I don't like that. You're kind of taking elements of the game that's been incorporated for years now.
Yeah.
And you're
They're
just
fun to
gonna
watch, and then I'll miss it.
But I will say the time clock for pitchers this past season really helped speed up a lot of games that just continue to drag on. And you're trying not to dilute the product, obviously, and you want to keep the baseball purists happy. But I kind of think this is just another move to kind of expedite these games and not let them go 4.5 hours long.
I want to add a thing too. Also talks about maybe beginning extra innings with a runner on second base. How weird would that be if that
It's like
happens?
a college overtime
Yeah.
football rule.
Well, and I look at it and I think, with overtime in general with the NFL, we already had issues with that. Why change something that isn't broken? The MLB has,
True.
You watch that World Series Game 7. That was one of the most incredible games that we could ever watch.
Unbelievable.
And it was in extra innings, so why are we going to try and change something that is so meaningful to a sport that's been around, that's literally America's national pastime? Now, with the national pastime, that brings us to the other topic that we have, which is the World Baseball Classic. Many people out there do not know, but the World Baseball Classic is the Olympics of baseball, and it will be happening in March of 2017, so next month. And there are 4 different rounds or 3 different rounds, 4 different groups. It starts with the semifinals, or the quarterfinals, I should say. And so from that, they'll go to the semifinals. Those semifinals will be held in Tokyo and in San Diego, and then the championship round will be in Los Angeles.
Gee, that's
So
interesting.
who won the last World Baseball Classic?
It was the Dominican Republic.
Can anyone stop the Dominicans? I mean,
Well, it's interesting because that team has Robinson Cano. They have a bunch of different guys that are power hitters that are old. They're aging over time. That was 4 years ago the last time this happened. So they're trying to make this like the Olympics. They're going every 4 years. And so I think the Dominicans are great. But I look at a team like Venezuela. That team has a ton of Astros on that team. Miguel Cabrera, Jose Altuve. They've got speed. They've got power. I also look at Puerto Rico. That's a team that has Carlos Beltran, definitely old, but a good veteran leader. And then the USA. The USA you can't sleep on, as well as Japan, who won the previous 2 World Classics.
I think even getting out of the quarterfinals for the Americans would be something to hang their hat on. It's just really tough to beat, the Dominican and the Puerto Rico of the world when, they're traditional baseball powerhouses that really kind of command the sport.
Right.
Playing at home could help, though, for what it's worth.
That's true.
I think that it also, if the USA does win this, that'll bring more awareness to the country. I think that a lot of reasons why this is so unknown is because the USA has not even made it to the semifinals. So it's definitely going to be interesting. Last year, or the last time this happened, the Dominican Republic kind of ran away with this, and their country celebrated for 4 days, I think it was. But the USA doesn't even know this exists. So maybe a championship for the USA will allow for the general public to understand, hey, this is a meaningful series. It's a tournament, so it's definitely different in baseball. You don't really play baseball in tournaments. The playoffs, of course, in the MLB is slightly different than the regular season, but this is in a schedule where it's 7 games set, and it's win or go home basically. So
This has to be our year.
it hopefully will be. One thing that I look at with the USA is their pitching is kind of weak. Their best pitcher is Chris Archer out of Tampa Bay Rays. Tanner Roark, who's a quietly good 3-starter for the Nationals. But what's sad about the USA is the fact that players like Clayton Kershaw, players like Mike Trout, these top-tier pitchers, they're not playing because they're focusing on spring training, which
They're
is
not
also
making money
happening
at the
right
World
now.
Baseball Classic.
It's like the bowl game's kind of the same
Yeah,
thing.
like the bowl
It's a
game,
parallel.
it makes sense.
Hey, but also this is due to their country. They're serving their country. This is something where they're representing
Oh.
them. So it's a matter of, are
is
you
true.
serving your team or are you serving your country?
Come
Well, if you
on.
put it in that perspective,
Come
I
on.
don't know about that.
I don't
but
know.
yeah.
It's tough.
Yeah.
It's tough both ways. But at the end of the day, guess what? We have baseball, and that's the
Yes.
exciting thing about
Yes.
it. We have
all
baseball
that
1
matters.
month early, which is super exciting, and I'm excited to watch it. And I hope that people out there will understand what this really means to our country, what this means to countries all around. There's active participation. I actually was lucky enough to go to the very first World Classic in 2006. And I remember watching Japan play Korea, and oh my goodness, the fan base was just incredible. There were drums in the stadium. People were chanting. They were like, "Hail Korea!"
Yeah.
And it was just
Is that the little chant they got?
that was their chant. That was their chant. They had the thunder sticks.
That is cool.
Hail Korea! I mean, it was incredible, and it's a different scene for baseball, and I think it's really good for the sport, especially for people that are arguing that it's too long. It gives enjoyment in the stadium. It means something more than just the game. So, and it's exciting, I think, as a fan from a USA perspective, because this is the sport that originated here. So, but with that. That'll close our show.
will.
First of all, we just want to thank our producer and for the rest of the crew as well. It's been incredible to be able to have a studio. I've had a good time on here, guys, and it's something that I'm really looking forward to continuing.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much all we have for this week. But for more information about our show, go to our Facebook page, Unscripted DFW. You can find us also on Twitter and Instagram, also at Unscripted DFW. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next time.